Revealed at my husband's funeral. An incredible message that changed everything forever. The sun blazed down as the townsfolk gathered, hats in hand and hearts heavy. Grace stood by Tom's casket, painted cheeks a stark contrast to the black dress she wore. Muffled sobs echoed around her, but her heart felt like it was shattering. Tom, her rock, her World War II veteran, the one who always said they could weather any storm together, gone. Her fingers trembling, she read the homage handwritten by someone's shaky hand, but it was a letter that caught her eye. One that whispered Thomas' secrets from beyond the grave. Hues of pink and orange painted the horizon that evening. Restless thoughts consumed her. Tom had been her everything, the guiding hand on the family farm she'd come to cherish. Their laughter often danced through the open windows, sweet aromas of baked treats wafting like a warm embrace through their home. But it didn't take long for reality to intrude on those rose-colored whispers. The eulogy marked only the beginning of her storm. With sleepless nights, Grace stumbled through the piles of condolence cards and casseroles. Each well-meaning meal lodged an ache in her chest, a reminder of the empty chair at their table. And that when she found it, a letter hidden in the corner of Tom's Bible. A blunt reminder of their struggles, a list of bills unpaid, debts he never shared, and realities he carefully kept cloaked from her view. The betrayal cut deep. All this time he had shielded her from a truth so stark it sent chills down her spine. Here she was, a schoolteacher in a tight-knit community, facing debts that could swallow her cherished farm whole. The world outside felt different now, familiar faces suddenly strangers. Grace walked through the town square where Tom had shown her how to plant seeds just right, but the soil now felt cold. Sunbeams flickered against her skin, awakening a yearning for justice and accountability. How could Tom's neighbors, their friends, have sat idly by when this hardship crept upon them like a thief in the night? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She organized a town hall meeting, her way of confronting the pain and the truths buried under layers of comfort. Standing at that podium, her hands shook, but her heart beat loud. She shared sweet memories of Tom interlaced with the raw truths of their struggles. They listened, faces revealed the surprise and anger, as she challenged the unspoken prejudices that festered beneath their polished lives. Faces softened, some shifted uncomfortably, while others leaned in with a flicker of understanding. Her voice held a bittersweet tremor, and just when the weight of silence felt suffocating, she ventured forth into the collective unease. We must do better. We must lift our voices for those who suffer behind closed doors. It hung in the air, an invitation for change. But just as she was about to step down, a voice broke the quiet, a question that could unravel their very foundation. What would the community's true character reveal in the face of change? Grace's heart raced. She stood on the precipice of something monumental, and she could feel it in her bones. The room was charged. Clusters of people shifted nervously, their eyes darting between each other and Grace. She felt the weight of their stares, curiosity laced with uncertainty. The question hung like dense fog, filling the space with tension. Who asked that? She thought. Grace scanned the crowd, searching for the voice that had broken through her moment of courage. The silence broke again as an elderly man raised his hand, his face lined with experience. We need to know what's going on, Grace. We love Tom. You know that. But this changes everything. Every eye turned toward her, expectant. The questions flashed through her mind like shooting stars. Did they know what Tom had hidden from her? Did they understand how much she loathed feeling betrayed by the man she trusted the most? Her breaths came quick, but she had to focus. This moment wasn't just for her. It was for everyone. I was blindsided, she confessed, her voice trembling. Tom kept things from me, financial struggles, debts. It's hard to process at that moment, she wavered, wanting to wrap herself in the comfort of Tom's memory, to remind herself of the good days. But she couldn't. Not now. As the words spilled out, the crowd leaned in closer, visibly moved. She recounted their life together, the shared dreams that had begun to wither under the weight of hidden responsibilities. The laughter, the warmth, The simple joy of planting seeds together, it all became a bittersweet backdrop to the harsh reality that had settled like dust on their lives. Then she intensified her gaze, directing it to the man who had spoken. "And you, Carl, I know you saw him struggling. Why didn't anyone say something? Why didn't you just help?" Carl shifted uncomfortably, suddenly an example of their town's unspoken code. "We thought you were doing all right," he finally said. The air crackled with the revelation of collective denial. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The truth was finally surfacing. One by one, people spoke up. "I thought he was proud," another woman said. "I didn't know how deep it ran." Grace's heart sank. But she understood now, it wasn't just Tom's secret. It was a community that had failed each other. Each anguished confession echoed the reality that they had all turned a blind eye. She felt the tears pricking at her eyes. They were finally touching back on the love that had always existed, just beneath the surface. "But we can't let this go on," she insisted, her voice rising with resolve. "If we are to honor Tom, we need to make sure no one else suffers in silence. We need to keep each other accountable." The murmurs grew, a collective agreement brewing in the air. Grace caught glimpses of determination in familiar faces, shadows of guilt mingling with hope. The passion surged, and the room filled with a new purpose. Commitments to change blossomed, plans for monthly gatherings, open dialogues about financial needs, mental health checks. But as the crowd began to disperse, Grace felt an unsettling tug at her heart. Was this enough? Could they really change? And amid all this newfound clarity, what would she do next about the debts Tom left behind? As she took one last glance back at the crowd, she caught a pair of eyes, bright yet troubled, full of questions. Someone knew more. Something else stirred just beneath the surface. The stones of their world were shifting under her feet, and the real question loomed larger than before. How deep did the secrets run? And was she ready to face what lay beneath? The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the town square as the gathering disbanded. Grace stood frozen for a moment, the weight of her words still echoing in her ears. It was a strange blend of relief and dread. People were finally opening up, but the emotional well was far deeper than she ever anticipated. That as she turned away, she spotted the familiar face again, Abigail, her neighbor from 2 houses down. The woman had a talent for masking her emotions, but today her brows were furrowed, and her mouth tightened into a line of concern. Grace felt drawn to her like a moth to a flame. "Abigail!" Grace called out, gesturing for her to come over. Abigail walked slowly, apprehension in her every step. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Abigail glanced at the ground, then back to Grace, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to say anything in there. It didn't feel like the right moment." "What is it?" Grace pressed, her heart beginning to race. Abigail hesitated, her gaze darting to the crowd before landing back on Grace's urging eyes. "I saw Tom a week before." She paused, clearly uncomfortable. "He was meeting someone. They were in the cafe in town talking very closely. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now a creeping sense of dread raced through Grace as she absorbed Abigail's words. What more had Tom hidden? Her mind splintered, a dozen questions tumbling out like stones from a crumbling wall. Who? Was it a friend? A relative? "I don't know for sure," Abigail replied, shaking her head. "I didn't get close enough to hear anything. But they were leaning in, and he looked troubled." Troubled. The word echoed in Grace's mind, deepening her already unbearable grief. Now she felt a pit of confusion mixing with her sorrow, messier and darker. Instinctively she needed to know more, but she had no idea how to access that knowledge. It wasn't just Tom's debts that haunted her. It was the ambiguity of his last days. "Thank you for telling me," Grace managed to say, her heart pounding against her ribcage. But part of her wished she hadn't heard it at all. As Abigail walked away, Grace started to contemplate her next move. With every face in town blurring into one collective symbol of her loss, she couldn't shake the notion that secrets would keep bubbling to the surface, and she was at the center of it all, determined to uncover the truth. She knew she needed to speak with those who had been closest to Tom. She wasn't just a widow now. She was a detective in search of answers. The thought sparked a flicker of energy within her. But just then, a sudden commotion drew her attention. A small group had gathered around something in the park, a cardboard box, forgotten amid the fallen leaves. Curiosity surged through her as she made her way closer. "Hey, what is going on?" Grace asked, weaving through the crowd. A man crouched next to the box, his face pale. As she approached, instructions of opening it flew around like whispers on the wind. "What if," someone said, trailing off as if the thought alone could change the whole situation. Grace stepped forward, her breath caught in her throat. The curiosity was almost unbearable. What lay inside? Secrets, truths, or yet another burden from Tom's past waiting to be uncovered? As she watched the man pry open the box, the crowd held its breath. Grace's heart raced. What awaited her, a lifeline or a deeper pit of despair? "Wait, don't open it yet," she blurted out, feeling more anxious than ever. The silence stretched taut, eyes widening. What if this was the revelation she had been dreading? What if they opened the door to even more secrets? And why did she feel that whatever lay within could change everything once again? The man paused, fingers hovering above the box as he turned to look at Grace. Uncertainty etched on his face. The crowd became a living entity, collectively holding its breath, a mixture of curiosity and unease swirling between them. What could possibly lie within the cardboard confines that had summoned such tension? "Please, I just need a moment," she pleaded, her voice softer now, but urgency lay beneath it. Every pair of eyes watched her. 1,000 questions lingered in the air, but none voiced in that suspended moment. Grace stepped closer, the scent of damp leaves and fading autumn clinging to her. She could almost hear the whisper of Tom's laughter around her, ghost-like in the crisp evening air. In the pit of her stomach, a sense of foreboding was building. After everything she had already unearthed, what if this was a final piece she wasn't ready to confront? "Maybe it's best to see what's inside together," the man finally said, glancing around at the crowd. He seemed to test the mood, searching for an ally among the gathering. After all, it might belong to someone here. "No," Grace interrupted, her heart pounding louder than her thoughts. "What if it's something personal? Something that could hurt us? Or worse, something that could hurt Tom's memory?" As the last word left her lips, she felt the weight of the crowd's breath release. A mixture of relief and apprehension. It's not that she intended to keep them from discovering something, but part of her feared the truth could pull them deeper into grief. "Maybe it's not for us to open." "Not yet," she suggested quietly, searching each face for understanding. A few nodded, their expressions softening. Just then, one person in the back piped up, "But we need to know. We owe it to Tom." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, igniting a fire within her. In her gut, she felt the tension rise again, the desire for answers battling against a protective instinct for Tom's secrets, a struggle she hadn't quite expected to feel today. Grace fought back tears. What if this box, this ill-fated cardboard container, held everything she feared? She wanted to scream that Tom wasn't just a man of debts and secrets. He was a husband, a partner, her heart. But what she didn't expect was for a friend from the edge of the crowd, Emily, to step forward. "What if it's a message? A real message, something intended for one of us?" Her voice rang with unexpected clarity, cutting through the despair like a beacon. A hushed silence enveloped them, and in that moment, Grace's heart flickered with a glimmer of hope. What if it was a message from Tom? Would it explain everything? Would it mend the cracks that had formed since he left? "Open it," she found herself saying, the words spilling out before she could rein them back. With her heart in her throat, she stepped back, holding her breath as the man finally lowered the flaps of the box. As it opened, the first object to come into view was a faded envelope, delicately tucked between an old shirt and a bundle of what looked like photographs. The atmosphere shifted, anticipation and dread warring for dominance. "Let us see what's inside," he said, gripping the envelope. Her palms felt clammy, but as he carefully pulled it out, a rush of adrenaline coursed through her. Would it hold the answers? Questions flooded her mind. What if it's everything? She whispered to herself, fear clawing at her chest as the man began to break the seal, and just then, the distant sound of a siren blared through the air, piercing the stillness and momentarily distracting everyone from the envelope's impending revelations. Grace felt a shiver creep down her spine. Was this a bad omen? "Open it," someone urged again, and all eyes turned to her, the collective sentiment urging her forward. Whatever lay inside was still shrouded in mystery. But would it reveal the truth or cast shadows on her love for Tom forever? Grace inhaled sharply. In that moment she realized this was more than a box. It was a pivotal moment. One that could change everything. The siren echoed again, a stark reminder of the reality she faced. "Open it now," she commanded softly, her heart racing as they prepared to peel back yet another layer of Tom's life. What waited inside? Would it give Grace hope or further deepen her despair? And as the envelope was finally opened, the crowd hushed, waiting. What awaited them could unravel the past, or weave a new tapestry of understanding. Would this be the end of confusion, or the beginning of more heartbreak? As the man lifted the flap of the envelope, a hush spread through the crowd. Grace could feel the air shift, heavy with anticipation and anxiety. She leaned in closer, her pulse pounding in her ears. What could Tom possibly want them to know? The questions rattled around in her mind like loose change in a pocket, each one more urgent than the last. For years they had shared everything, or so she thought. What if this was his last chance to clear the air, or to speak to her in a way he never could while he was alive? The man extracted the letter, its surface yellowed with age, smudged in spots as if it had traveled far before reaching them. He unfolded it slowly, careful not to tear the fragile edges. Words written in Tom's familiar scrawl seemed to dance off the page, carrying with them fragments of thought and emotion that held the power to shift everything. "I'm sorry." He began reading aloud, but his voice trembled. The first words gripped Grace's heart painfully, a visceral reminder of loss. She instinctively reached out to clutch Emily's arm, grounding herself as the siren's wail faded into the background. The crowd leaned in closer, breaths held, eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. "For the burden I've left behind." He paused, clearing his throat, and Grace could see the wealth of emotions reflected in the faces surrounding them. "You all deserve the truth. I haven't been the man you thought I was." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Grace's eyes widened and she drew in a sharp breath. Did he really mean that? As he continued, every word seemed to stretch, creating an invisible thread connecting their hearts in the chill of the evening. "I was running from my past and it led me to bad decisions. I was scared, ashamed. I didn't want to drag you all into my mess." With each sentence, Grace felt the pieces of her memories scramble together. Every fight, every whisper of concern that she'd brushed off as worries of an overprotective wife was now laid bare. The innocence she'd clung to was slowly unraveling in front of her. "I know this may not be enough to make up for the pain," the man read, "but I hope somehow this letter will give you a measure of peace." Tom's honesty stung. The raw vulnerability spilling from the page whispered secrets of a man who loved fiercely but felt too trapped by his own fears to show it. Tears began to prick at Grace's eyes. Was she supposed to feel anger? Betrayal? Instead, an overwhelming sadness took hold as the words flowed. Something else began to rise within her, an unyielding determination. It was a spark igniting a fire. Who was she to let Tom's fears define the narrative of their lives? She wanted to reclaim their love story, to hold on to the laughter, the memories, and the joy they shared as much as the pain. What else? Someone breathed from the crowd, breaking the stillness. The urgency in their tone filled Grace with a sense of responsibility. It wasn't just Tom's message. It was a call to action. "Let us keep going," she urged, the crowd responding with nods and murmurs of encouragement. "We owe it to him to us to hear everything." The man glanced at Grace, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, but then steeled himself, continuing to read. As the letter unfolded, Grace found herself immersed in a world where Tom was more than just the man who had left. He was a man who had loved deeply, even amidst his hidden struggles, and as the final words echoed around them, a new tension filled the air, lingering like smoke after a fire. "There are things you don't yet understand," he read. "And I hope this letter guides you toward the truth." "Truth?" Grace echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. What truth awaited? The whisper of dread began to mingle with the rush of possibility. Before she could fully comprehend her rising emotions, her gaze flickered down the street where a shadow emerged. Someone was approaching, someone she hadn't expected to see. Would this visitor bring clarity or chaos into her already tumultuous world? The figure grew clearer as it walked closer, the sun casting long shadows across the pavement. Grace's heart quickened. It was Jake, Tom's estranged brother, a man she hadn't seen in years. He had distanced himself after a falling out, but here he was, his expression a mixture of apprehension and urgency. The crowd, sensing the shift, turned their eyes towards him, curiosity overriding their grief. "Jake," Grace called, taken aback. She realized she hadn't processed the depths of Tom's letters, nor the implications of this unexpected return. "What are you doing here?" Without answering, Jake stepped forward, his movements shaky, but his eyes were locked on the man holding the letter. I heard what he wrote," he said, voice catching in his throat. "And I have something to add, some things you all need to know." Grace felt an electric pulse of energy ripple through the crowd. She glanced at the man with the letter, who was staring at Jake, seemingly torn. "Is this the right time?" he questioned softly. "No, it might not be," Jake conceded, "but if Tom left it out, then it was meant to be said now." His voice rose above the murmurs, ringing with a desperate urgency. "There's so much you don't understand about our family." Grace's stomach churned. Shades of her tensions with Tom's family flickered back. The hidden truths, the things unsaid, they all resonated like distant echoes. "What do you mean?" she pressed, her pulse racing. Jake took a deep breath, pushing through the silence that had enveloped them. "Tom and we had our issues, yes, but I never wanted to leave him the way I did. He was carrying something heavy, far heavier than you know. It ate at him. It tore him apart inside." The crowd listened intently. Emily clutched Grace's arm tighter, eyes wide with concern. Grace could hardly breathe. Every word from Jake felt like a rock hitting the water, creating ripples of uncertainty. "I found out later," Jake continued, his voice breaking. "Tom was trying to protect you from the truth. Our father's legacy was darker than we ever spoke of. There were debts, promises made, and enemies." He trailed off, swallowing hard. It was all too intense for him. He thought he could shield you, but it only drew him deeper into a pool of shame. Grace shook her head, disbelieving. Could it be true? How far had Tom gone to keep her in the dark? The pieces of her memories twisted again, like branches in a storm. "I know this sounds insane," Jake said, raising his hands to calm the nervous crowd, "but I am not here to cast blame. I want to let you know that Tom struggled, yes, but he loved you fiercely. He wanted better for you, and it broke him to think you might be hurt by any of this. Why didn't he tell me?" Grace croaked, her voice trembling. "If he loved me, why did he hide it?" "Because he was scared," Jake replied, stepping closer, urgency raw in his tone. "And now we all have to face it." Grace felt the weight of his words linger in the air like a fog. This wasn't just about Tom anymore. This was about all of them. Questions bubbled in her throat, but one stood out, demanding to be heard. "What does this mean for us? For our family?" Just as Jake opened his mouth to respond, a loud crash echoed down the street, causing everyone to turn. A car had skidded to a halt, and out of it spilled a tumult of chaos, a paramedic team, voices sharp and frantic. "Is someone hurt?" Grace instinctively moved, adrenaline fueling her as anxiety clawed at her heart. What is happening? Everything shifted once more, pulling the focus away from the shadowy truths, back towards the urgent present. In that moment, she felt a riveting blend of fear and determination washing over her. Whatever revelations lay ahead, they were just beginning to unfold, and she would not take another step back. The atmosphere crackled with uncertain energy, weaving threads of danger and discovery. Did the unseen troubles from Tom's past tie into this? Or were they simply two worlds colliding? The questions hung in the air, unanswered and pulsating, ready for the next revelation to unfold. The panicked cries of the paramedics sliced through the moment like glass. Grace felt her heart racing as she stepped forward, instinct pulling her closer to the chaos. The medics fanned out in a flurry of motion, a stretch of red and white lights illuminating the scene. She tried to make sense of it all. Her mind raced, splitting between concern for the unfortunate soul who faced danger, and the unresolved tension Jake had just stirred up. "Is anyone hurt?" Grace shouted, her voice barely piercing the flickering backdrop of chaos. She glanced back, wanting reassurance from Jake, but he was frozen, his expression caught between shock and determination. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, but the sight of a stretcher being pulled from the ambulance snapped her focus back. "Over there!" a paramedic gestured, and the team rushed toward a figure crumpled on the pavement. A bystander had collapsed. The clarity of the situation hit Grace like a punch to the gut. "Call 911. Someone shouted, but it was already too late. The ambulance was right there, but time seemed to stretch as they worked. A woman with bleached blonde hair and panic in her eyes knelt beside the fallen figure, shaking him gently. "Wake up, please. Don't leave me." Grace's chest tightened. Details of the scene started fading into a blur, the cries melding into a cacophony of doubt and dread. In the midst of her worry, she turned to Jake, desperate for a lifeline against the storm of emotions crashing over her. "Do you know what is happening?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He met her gaze, hesitation clouding his features. I don't know," he admitted, vulnerability punctuating the air between them. "But we need to find out what's going on." Just then a familiar face emerged from the crowd. Ethan, Tom's oldest friend, rushed forward, his brows furrowed with concern. "What is happening?" he asked, his tone urgent. Emily released her grip on Grace's arm, her expression turning more towards a question of safety, something they needed amidst this unraveling. "They need to get him stable," a paramedic instructed, his voice growing sharper as he focused on the downed man. Grace strained to see who it was. As the scene unfolded before her, she felt a pull, a desire to know more, to not only uncover the fate of this stranger, but also to confront the rising tide of questions around Tom's legacy. The crowd started to close in on the scene, everyone drawn to the mystery of pain and desperation. A few murmurs rose, questioning if the mystery was connected to Tom's family, to the secrets that Jake had just revealed. The invisible threads of truth around them twisted tighter, binding their stories in ways they didn't yet understand. Grace swallowed hard, a sense of determination swelling within her. If answers were on the way, she was ready. For Tom. For whatever connection there was between the past and this unfolding moment. She needed clarity, a guiding light in the darkness that confusion had cast over their lives. Just as one paramedic called for the fire department to assist, another shouted, "We need to know his medical history." The crowd held its collective breath as someone stepped forward, panic etched in their features. I think I know him," they cried, their voice breaking through the uncertainty like a cry for help. As voices rose and emotions spilled, Grace felt the ground beneath her shift. There were pieces of a puzzle awaiting assembly, a story waiting to be uncovered that might change everything she thought she knew. But would those fragments lead to resolution or just more chaos? The air crackled with tension, the next wave of events knitting together threads of fate, one more revelation waiting in the wings. Would they uncover the truth that could heal or shatter them all? The woman who had shouted claimed to know him. It sent a chill through the crowd. Grace looked back and saw Jake's eyes widen, confusion morphing into urgency. "Do you know who it is?" he asked, inching closer to the edge of the gathering. I think it's Liam," the woman stammered, her breaths coming fast. "Yes, my brother. He has always been." Her voice cracked, and tears streamed down her cheeks. "He has always been there for us." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Grace watched the medic's expression shift as he tried to stabilize Liam, the urgency morphing into sheer desperation. She took a step closer, wanting to reach out to the woman to say something, but words slipped through her grasp like water. Ethan turned to Grace, intensity marking his features. "What do we do?" "We need to help her." "We have to stay calm," she replied, though her own heart hammered against her ribs. In the midst of chaos she could barely breathe. Fractured connections and unspoken truths knotted painfully in her chest. If Liam needs medical history, maybe she can help. Is there a question about him? Jake's voice cut in as he stepped forward. "We might not have much time." I didn't think. The woman struggled to regain control, but fear washed over her face. "He didn't want anyone to know. He never should have been here alone." He had her voice trailed off into choking sobs, and it felt like the weight of her words hung in the air, urging everyone to listen. "What did he have?" Grace pressed gently, a spark of hope igniting. "If he's going to survive, he has a heart condition," the woman finally managed, hands trembling as she wiped her tears away with the back of her hand. "When we lost our parents, he promised me he wouldn't let it take him too." Around them the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Whispers floated on the wind, some speculated about secrets, others focused on the weight of family obligations. Grace felt the pulse of confusion deepen. "Stay with me, Liam. Stay with me." The woman bent closer, her voice filled with raw emotion. "Please." As the paramedics worked, Grace felt torn. Part of her ached for the family struggling against loss, while another part was drawn to Jake's side, all his stories about Tom pushing at her mind. They were somehow intertwined, and the realization sent ripples through her heart. Grace, Jake whispered, grabbing her arm. What if Tom had something to do with this? His brother, she said, skepticism crawling up her spine. But why? What are you thinking? Before Jake could respond, a siren blared in the distance, and the collective awareness shifted. Fire trucks and additional emergency vehicles rolled into view, painting the scene in bursts of red and flashing lights. Breathless, Grace studied the crowd, noticing others who hung back, their expressions cloaked in shadows, people who appeared to share a deeper connection with Liam. It's not just that, she said quietly, her voice shaking. There's more at play. There has to be, doesn't he there? Eyes darted around as if anticipating the next move, the weight of unspoken secrets threatening to crush them all. The air vibrated with tumultuous energy, a storm brewing beneath the surface of their mundane lives. And just then, a new figure emerged from the crowd, a flash of familiar purple hair catching Grace's attention. Her heart skidded as their eyes locked. No, not you. Before she could voice her disbelief, a crooked smile crept across the newcomer's lips, and they said, "You're not going to believe what I found out." With that, the tension in Grace's chest ignited, propelling her forward into the storm of uncovered truths, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for the aftermath. What would they discover? Would it shatter their world even more? Or could it finally piece together the fragments of their lives? The crowd shifted again, uneasy murmurs blending with the mechanical wails of sirens. All eyes were on the newcomer, a blend of familiarity and dread. Grace felt her heart race, her breath catching in her throat. This was the last person she expected to see. Cleo, Grace managed, the name slipping out on a breath. Memories of long talks and laughter bubbled to the surface, layered with awkward silences and fading friendships. Cleo had been more than just someone from their past. She embodied a chapter in Grace's life that felt suspended, caught between joy and unfinished business. "Grace, it's so good to see you," Cleo said, her voice steady but edged with an unease that mirrored Grace's own. "But we don't have much time. Liam, he's in trouble." Grace blinked, absorbing her words. "What do you mean? You know him?" "More than you think," Cleo replied, glancing at the paramedics who were still desperately working on Liam. "And I'm afraid there are things you don't know, things that could change everything." "What's that supposed to mean?" Jake interjected, stepping protectively closer to Grace. "What do you have to say about Liam?" Cleo's eyes flicked to the ground, her expression clouding with concern. "Liam's dad. He hid the truth from us. I found out just before everything happened." Her voice broke slightly, the raw emotion evident. "What truth?" Grace felt a tingle of fear wash over her, colliding with a desperate curiosity. She sensed there was more beneath Cleo's words. "He's not just Liam. He's the son of a man who, well, let us just say he had dealings with Tom and they weren't good." Cleo's voice dropped lower, urgency behind each word. "I think Tom wanted something from him. Something dangerous." Jake frowned, the flicker of realization dawning in his eyes. "You can't be serious. What kind of dealings?" "I don't have all the details, but I've seen documents. Loans, threats. Liam was caught in the middle of it all, carrying a burden he never asked for." Cleo's hands shook slightly as she spoke, and Grace noticed the tightening of her jaw. She looked haunted by what she knew. Around them, the crowd's whispers grew louder, weaving tales of betrayal and conspiracy. The weight of their eyes pressed down on Grace, the noise swirling her thoughts into a vortex of anxiety. "Why didn't you say anything before?" Grace pressed, feeling both hurt and frustrated. "If you knew something, if you cared enough, I tried. God, you don't understand how hard it was. I didn't know how it would play out. I thought Liam would be safe, but it seems..." Cleo started to choke on her words. "Safe?" Grace echoed, feeling anger bubbling up. How could anyone feel safe with someone like Tom around? Just then a loud crack echoed from the chaos, drawing everyone's attention. A flash of light burst from a nearby alley, shadows dancing and flickering as they rushed forward. "What was that?" Ethan said, scanning the area. "Think." Cleo's eyes widened. "We need to go. Now. It's not just Liam who's in danger." Grace's heart sank even further. Suddenly everything felt intertwined. Liam, Tom, Cleo, even herself and Jake. The threads of their lives began to unravel all around them, filled with secrets and webs of deceit. Without waiting, Cleo turned and started rushing toward the alley. "Come on." "Wait." "Cleo." Grace shouted, her voice half lost in the chaos. But Cleo was already disappearing into the shadows, leaving Grace standing at the edge of an unfolding mystery that threatened to pull her in. What do we do? She turned to Jake, her voice trembling. Should we follow her? Jake's face was set in determination. We need answers. If there's more going on, we can't just stand here. As they took steps toward the alley, Grace felt a swell of urgency wash over her. She was teetering on the brink of something monumental. Little did she know, the answers they sought could unravel everything they thought they knew about each other and themselves. The unease deepened in her chest, and with every step forward, one question loomed larger than the rest. What truth was waiting for them in the shadows? The shadows thickened in the alley, whispering secrets of the past as Grace and Jake hurried after Cleo. Their footsteps echoed against the brick walls, each step charged with the nervous energy that thrummed in Grace's veins. She could feel it. This was the turning point. Unraveling threads pulled at the fabric of her heart, and she needed to know what awaited them on this dark path. Cleo moved ahead, her figure slipping and darting as she turned corners. Hurry! She called back, urgency fueling her words. As they rounded a bend, the alley opened into a dimly lit courtyard. A flickering streetlight cast odd shapes, pooling shadows that danced like ghosts at their feet. Grace's pulse quickened. There was something electrifying about this place, like standing at the precipice of truth. What are we looking for? Jake asked as they approached Cleo, breathless. There's a meeting, a confrontation. It involves Liam and the man who wants to finish what was started long ago. You need to see this, Cleo insisted, her eyes sharp. Who is it? Grace's voice quivered, fear and determination mixing in her chest. What would Tom have to do with any of this? Before Cleo could respond, a low voice drifted toward them from a doorway ahead. Liam owes us and we're here to collect. Grace's heart dropped. That voice. It was the same cold tone she remembered from tales Tom had told. Stories wrapped in veils of warning. This isn't good, she whispered to Jake, who nodded, eyes wide. Cleo pressed onward, pulling them toward the doorway. We can't let it happen, she whispered fiercely. We need to protect Liam. They crept closer, hearts pounding in sync, but the scene that lay before them made everything freeze. Liam stood cornered, hands raised, dark circles framing fear in his eyes. The man opposite him, a figure cloaked in arrogance, grinned chillingly. Your brother wasn't brave enough to take control, but you'll pay for his cowardice, he sneered. Panic surged through Grace. What do we do? She breathed, her voice shaking. Distract him, Jake muttered. We have to get to Liam. Grace swallowed hard but found her voice. Hey! She shouted, stepping into view. The cold man turned, eyes narrowing. You think you can just bully him like this? A flicker of surprise crossed the man's face, then a cruel smirk. And who do we have here? The schoolteacher? This isn't a game. Grace stood tall, heart racing but steady. Liam is not your pawn. Let him go. You don't even know who you're messing with, she added, channeling every ounce of courage she had. You should learn to mind your own business, he retorted, stepping forward, eyes gleaming. But before he could take another step, Jake lunged, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting hard. A scuffle erupted as Cleo struck out at the man's face, throwing him off balance. Liam, sensing an opening, darted toward the door. Run! He shouted, urgency coating his voice with adrenaline coursing through her. Grace rushed to Liam's side, grabbing his arm to pull him away from the madness. We've got you. Just keep moving. Chaos enveloped them, the man yelling threats as Jake held him back, keeping him from pursuing. You've messed with the wrong people, Jake roared, his fury echoing off the alley walls. Outside, sirens wailed now, drawing closer, the sound blending into a symphony of urgency and fear. The weight of the moment felt monumental, sinking deeper as they fled. Why were you even here? Grace gasped at Liam, trying to make sense of the whirlwind. I thought I could handle it, I was caught in the middle. Liam replied, breathless and panicked, eyes wide and searching their faces. But now I see Tom was involved in something I never understood before. Put it on hold for now, Cleo urged, pushing them from behind. We need to get away before they realize you're gone. They sprinted toward the street, escaping the shadows into a cacophony of blue and red lights swirling outside. The police had arrived, and the commotion shifted focus. Grace felt a surge of hope. Safety was close as they reached the edge of the courtyard. Laughter and cheers erupted. from the gathering crowd, bewildering yet calming to their frayed nerves. For a moment everything seemed surreal, as if the storm had passed and left only echoes of tension behind. But as they took a collective breath, a heavy weight pressed back onto Grace's heart. So many unanswered questions lingered, and the truth felt just out of reach. She needed clarity. She needed to reconcile Tom's secrets with her own reality. "Liam, do you know the full story of what happened between your dad and Tom?" she asked, desperately searching for a way forward. Liam hesitated, breathing heavily, casting a cautious look at the chaos behind them. "I think there's so much hidden in old letters, past debts. Tom tried to shield me, but I found out too late. Then we need to see what's in those letters," Jake asserted. "It might be the key to understanding everything." Before anyone could respond, the distant sirens faded into the night. The tension around them began to lift, replaced by a sense of unity forged in the flames of chaos. They were bound now not just by the revealed truths, but by promises of confronting the past together. As they exited the alley, Grace locked eyes with Liam, hope igniting in her chest. "Whatever comes next, we face it as a family. We'll unravel Tom's story together." Liam nodded, the weight lifting slightly from his weary shoulders. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I've been running for too long. It's time to face it." With their breaths synchronized and their hearts united, they stepped into the chaos of light, aware that dawn was breaking on a new chapter. What lay ahead would reshape them, but they no longer feared the shadows. They were prepared to cut through the darkness and uncover the truths that had always been hidden. This was the moment of transformation, the beginning of their real journey. You need to subscribe now to follow their path as it unfolds. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these stories alive. Comment your thoughts on this shocking revelation. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible transformation.